Chronicles of a Gooner. Like and subscribe. Chronicles of a Gooner. Harry, Symeou time. Arsenal. Come on, you Gunners. Arsenal. Chronicles of a Gooner.
Hey Gooners, how are we doing? Welcome to the final pod of 2025, and we are going out with a bang. Arsenal end the year in style with a rousing victory over Aston Villa, 4-1 on the night. And it is a game that there was a lot of anxiety and nervousness around. And so to come through it with flying colours the way that Arsenal did, well, it's got everybody feeling great, and rightly so. We're going to break it all down on this episode. I got up this morning nice and early. I sat down. I did a bit of admin that I needed to get out of the way. I got my notepad out. I thought, let me make some notes on last night's game so that I make sure that I cover all the points that I want to and that I don't miss anything. And I'll be honest, I've been sucked into watching Arsenal 4, Aston Villa 1 content to the point where I've made no notes. But you know what? I don't think we need notes for yesterday's game. There's a lot to unpack. There's a lot to discuss, but it's all still so fresh in the mind. And when you're buzzing about something, you remember all the little bits, don't you? When you are trying to erase something from your memory, which we've had to do a fair few times over the last few years, you start to put certain moments and certain happenings into the deepest and darkest corners of your brain. But today, I remember it all. Today, I'm feeling great. What a way to end the year. And I guess a good place to start would be the news that we got earlier on in the day. Now, we did an episode in the morning on Tuesday morning where we talked about the lineup that I would like to see. And not in my wildest dreams did I think that Declan Rice was going to miss the game at that point. So when a few hours later, I was sort of knocking about the house, I do this thing, right, where you might not care, but I'm going to tell you anyway. I do this thing, right, where when I know I'm going to a game or I'm working on a game, I start getting ready way earlier than I need to. And then I sort of walk up and down the house with like my trainers on and I'm sort of ready to leave, but it ain't time to leave. And I keep looking at the clock and I'm like, well, I'll leave in 20 minutes. And then I get to that point and then I'm like, well, it's still too early, isn't it? Let's leave in 15 minutes, etc., etc. That was me yesterday. And I found the Declan Rice news popping up on my phone because I was really, really busy at one stage yesterday. Once we did the pod, I was off, I was out, I was running around. I was doing things for tonight's sort of family celebrations that we're having. And I picked up my phone and I saw this news. I saw Gunner Blog's post. Athletic, when it says Athletic, when it says Gunner Blog, when it says James McNicholas, you take it seriously. And it said that Declan Rice was unlikely to face Aston Villa tonight due to a knee injury that he sustained against Brighton. And then I started going down a bit of a rabbit hole. When did Declan Rice pick this injury up against Brighton? And it wasn't actually until I got to the ground that someone pointed out to me there was a clip or a video or a still image, depending on what post you were looking at, where Declan Rice seemed to be signaling to the bench that he had some sort of issue. He continued in the game and he managed to put on some unbelievable sprints towards the back end of the game, which probably led to people feeling he was okay. Look, I don't like the fact that he was left on the pitch with a problem and with an injury. I know we didn't have many choices against Brighton the other night. The game was finely balanced. It wasn't easy to sort of take that decision, I don't think, to hook Declan Rice off. Hopefully it's not a long-term thing. That's what the report is saying. And hopefully he'll be back sooner rather than later. But I've got to be honest, my optimism for last night's game was severely impacted by that news before I set off to get down to Emirates Stadium. Once I got there and the game started, I felt even worse about Declan Rice's absence because of how easily Aston Villa were cutting through our midfield, because of how easily they were breaking on us, because of how little physical presence we had in the middle of the park. And I sat there and I thought, why tonight of all nights have we got to be without Declan Rice? Now, there are certain games, Bruges away, Crystal Palace the other day in the Cup, where Rice doesn't start and you feel okay about it. And you look at it and you go, okay, it's not ideal. We'd rather have him in the team than not. But today's probably one of those days where you can get away with it. against Villa's midfield, where there is physicality, running power, and that was even without Boubacar Kamara. You always feel like you need a Declan Rice type, and I feel like in the early stages of the game, we really struggled, to make anything happen and to get a foothold in the game, because we just quite simply didn't have the presence that we needed in the middle of the park. So, yeah, it was a hard one to deal with emotionally, I think, in the lead up, and especially after the first 10, 15 minutes. But slowly but surely, Arsenal managed to get themselves back into the game, back in control. They managed to deal with the issues that Aston Villa were causing us. And I actually asked Mikel Arteta after the game what it was that he tweaked after that initial period where Aston Villa were cutting through us like a knife through butter. I tried to get it out of him. He wouldn't say. He said, look, halftime gives you an opportunity to reset, to pass on instruction. He also had a bit of a break at one stage when there was a player down in the first half, and he managed to pull everybody in, pretty much everybody anyway, and pass on some instructions. Watching the game back again this morning, I still can't quite work out exactly what Mikel or the players did to stop Aston Villa progressing the ball through the lines in the way that they were, other than to say that the press became more aggressive from our point of view. And it had to, because up until that point, what was happening was Aston Villa, who like to set up in a mid-block at times. You know, we talk about low blocks at Emirates Stadium and how that's a problem for us quite often. Aston Villa like a mid-block. And what we were finding was that we were going pressing, we were going hunting. But not everybody, in my opinion, was at full power. And when not everybody's at full power, and when the press is not completely synchronized, there are gaps and routes out of it if you're the opposition. And Aston Villa have good enough players, good enough quality to navigate their way through that. And that's what they were doing. And when they were navigating their way through Arsenal's press, they had superior sprinting power, superior running power. And Martin Zubimendi, for me, was left completely isolated. Now, Martin Zubimendi had an outstanding game, and we're going to come on to talk about the team on the whole. We'll work our way through every single player because I think they're all worthy of a mention and of a conversation and of a shout out today. So we will do that. But I felt that was the problem in the first half. What did we do to change it? I think that we started to press in more of a synchronized way. I think we were more aggressive in the press, and I think the distances between the various lines of our team, so defense, midfield, and attack, were smaller, were better. And as a result of that, Aston Villa didn't have as much joy. But make no bones about it, we were lucky in the opening stages of that game. Ollie Watkins had a glorious opportunity. I don't know how he's managed to skew that wide of the near post. And Ollie Watkins always scores against Arsenal. He did in the end last night. But you would have backed him, wouldn't you, there to have put Aston Villa in front. And when Arsenal go behind, we know it's a problem. When Arsenal go in front, which we did very, very early on in the second half, you feel like Arsenal are going to go on and win the game. I think that's 21 games now where Arsenal have taken the lead in a row where they've gone on to win them. Because we're that sort of team. We need the first goal. We couldn't get it in the first half. But straight after the break, we dug deep into the back pocket. We pulled out one of our famous set pieces. And Gabriel Magalhaes, back in the starting lineup, does what he does best. He gets up, he's tall, he's powerful, he's strong. And Emi Martinez, who was claiming foul, has to take a long, hard look at himself in the mirror because he was just too weak as a goalkeeper there. Now, Gabby is a force of nature. I agree, and I get that. But to claim a foul there, I thought was quite honestly laughable. Look, you would do it, wouldn't you, if you were in Martinez's position? But the thing is, where I was sitting in the press box, we've got a little monitor in front of each of us, right, or every two people or whatever, and you can see the replays. And I only needed one replay. Normally, in a sort of scramble like that, when I'm reporting or commentating on the game, I try not to commit until I'm sure, because there's nothing worse, and it happens because it's unavoidable at times. But there's nothing worse, I feel anyway, as a reporter or as a commentator, when I say something with conviction and then the replay shows that no, actually something else occurred. So I sort of, I went, Gabriel scores, blah, blah, blah. Will it stand though? And then I sort of bought myself a little bit of time. The minute I saw the first replay, I was sure that the goal was going to stand because there was just nothing in it. Nothing in it whatsoever. If anything, Gabriel has his shirt pulled before they get up off the ground and into the air. So, yeah, really, really big goal from a really, really big player. Great to have him back. And that then turned the tide for me. It really, really did. Martin Zubimendi's goal just a few minutes later was beautiful football. Beautiful football. Martin Odegaard gets on the ball, drives towards the edge of the penalty area, takes a lovely little touch to work it onto his left foot and into that space and to create that angle so that he can slip Martin Zubimendi in. And you know what? Zubimendi isn't exactly renowned for his goal scoring ability or his finishing capability, but I'll tell you this. There's very few players, and this is going to sound wild, right? Because we've got strikers, we've got wingers, we've got goal-scoring midfielders. But there's probably not another player that I would have preferred to be running onto the end of that. And I'll explain why. Composure. Composure is everything in that scenario. Spatial awareness, understanding what's going on around you and being able to stay calm and in the zone and make the right decision in terms of how you execute the finish. And then you've got to have the technical ability to pull it off. And Martin Zubimendi's calmness and composure served him really, really well there. And he just stabbed it past Emi Martinez, who was coming out trying to make the save. And at that point, I'm sorry, I know people say 2-0 is a dangerous lead. It's a precarious lead. The game was done because we had come out in that second half and we had literally, landed a few big hits on Aston Villa to the point where they were up against the ropes. And listen, we were talking in the build up to this game about how much better our attacking play has been in recent weeks. And it has been. Okay. The XG is much higher. And that is something that we've seen as a theme over the last few games. And you kept saying, and I kept saying that a battering of somebody is going to come, like it's due. But equally, Aston Villa were due to be knocked off their perch as well. They were on this incredible winning run. I think it was 11 games, was it? Unbelievable winning run, irresistible form. But when you looked at the underlying numbers around Aston Villa and you watched the highlights, as I did of a few of their games recently in the build-up to this, and just because I watch Match of the Day every week in general anyway, you always got the feeling that Aston Villa were doing it, but it might not be that sustainable just because the performances aren't quite as dominant as maybe their winning run and the scorelines say. But look, in the end, they got their comeuppance. And, there's a couple of teams I'd probably put ahead of them in terms of who I'd quite like to dish out the battering and beating to. But I think there's a little bit of a rivalry that's developed between Arsenal and Aston Villa in recent years. And it was actually very, very satisfying to watch them put to the sword the way that they were. So that's 2-0. 3-0 is an outstanding finish from Leandro Trossard. And again, from the first replay, it was clear to me that the goal should stand. And I've got no idea why the VAR took as long as it did. I know they've got to check properly. And there was one angle, to be fair to the officials, that made it look like Saka may have been in an offside position. And there was another angle where he looked clearly on. So it was interesting. In this one, and in this scenario, I did commit on my commentary and I said, there's no way Bukayo Saka's offside there. And so I had my fingers crossed. I was praying. And it was onside as per the check. And Leandro Trossard's goal stood. What a finish, by the way, from Leandro Trossard that is. The ball sits up. I think Timber got the last touch before and Trossard just sort of sweeps it into the bottom corner. It's an outstanding finish. Emi Martinez could do nothing about it. And if you thought the game was over at 2, then you were sure, weren't you, on 69 minutes when Leandro Trossard managed that. And then to wrap it all up, to just add the cherry on top of the icing, on top of the cake, Gabriel Jesus comes off the bench and does what he does. He comes on. It's a really smart bit of play on the left-hand side from Zubimendi. First of all, I think Nkapie plays it to Odegaard. Odegaard's under a bit of pressure, and so he takes a quick touch, and then he hooks the ball out to the left. Zubimendi does really well to beat his man, and then he puts the perfect weight on a pass that just takes Leandro Trossard into the final third. Across the edge of the box it goes. Jesus' first touch is exquisite. He opens up his right foot and bang, bends it into the far corner to make it 4-0, to send the place absolutely bonkers, and for him to have his moment. And listen, whatever whatever your faith is, right? And I know this is not a religious or political podcast, right? It's a football podcast. But whatever your faith is, you can't look at Gabriel Jesus and not think, wow. Like, and I know he revealed the top that said, I belong to Jesus. And there'll be people listening to this and watching this that are not Christians, and that's absolutely fine, right? But there's something about that for me. There's something deeper about that. Like, he's obviously tapped into something, his faith, to help him get through a really difficult period. He had this really severe injury just before it was during the World Cup, wasn't it? The first one. Then he comes back. Then he sort of gets himself back to fitness, has another problem. And then he sort of works his way back from a kind of knock-on problem from the first one. And you think, oh, he's back. And last Christmas, around about that time, he had a really good spell. And then bang, he's hit with another one of those injuries. The journey this guy's been on has been so difficult. And he will have had some dark moments. And look, I'm not the most religious person in the world. I would say I'm not religious at all. But I think when you look at someone who's clearly been able to tap into that faith and use it to really, really great effect, and to help them and to guide them through a little bit of a difficult time, to give them a purpose, I think you can't help but look and be happy for him. And I'd say that whatever the religion, like, he obviously believes it. He obviously feels connected to it, and it's really, really helped him. And it's great to see a story like that kind of come full circle. And Gabriel Jesus, made sure that Aston Villa were on the receiving end of a real thumping. Look, obviously Aston Villa scored on 94 minutes because Ollie Watkins always scores against Arsenal. Shit goal to concede. David Raya made an outstanding double save before that, and you felt at that point that he was destined for the clean sheet. He didn't get it, unfortunately, but that should not deter from what was a really, really good night for the Arsenal overall. And I talked about this in the lead up to the game. Some victories are worth more than 3 points. Some victories just are. And the reason this is worth more than 3 points is not because we got any more than 3 points. It's not because beating Aston Villa at home is this monumental and historic result that we should look back on for years and years to come. But it's because, as I said before, it represents Arsenal overcoming an obstacle and a hurdle that had previously haunted them. That's why I feel so strongly about this victory. That's why I feel so sort of boosted and buoyant by it, I think, because, you look at Brighton, team that have come to the Emirates many, many times and caused us problems. They came here the other day. We got over the line. Aston Villa came here, and they, again, are a side that have caused us problems. They beat us 24 days ago, 25 days ago now. And we've managed to put that right nice and quickly. And not only have we beaten them and got all 3 points, because, listen, I'd be buzzing if we beat them 1-0 and it came off of Saliba's arse at the back post and crept over the line. But the fact that we've done it in this emphatic way, it just restores people's belief and faith in this team's ability to attack. And throughout the season, there have very rarely been questions about our ability to defend. Has our defensive power dwindled a little bit when we've had key players missing? Yes, it has. But generally speaking, we're a really, really good defensive side. Offensively, it hasn't always clicked. And over the last few weeks, you've seen progress. More XG, more attempts at goal, more touches in the opposition's box. All of that stuff, all of the underlying metrics have been improving week upon week upon week. And then so when you get a game like this, which restores a lot of confidence, actually then you look back and you go, no, this was coming. Like, why was I panicking? This was coming. And we finally got what some of our recent attacking performances deserve, as far as I could see it. So really, really delighted. Look, we're going to take a really short pause. When we come back, we're going to talk through some of the individuals. We're going to talk about some of the other incidents. Unai Emery's failure to shake Mikel Arteta's hand. I got to get onto this. We're going to talk about Mikel Merino because I think he was lucky to stay on the pitch. It's worth highlighting that, just in the interest of fairness. So we'll do that as well. We'll do all of that after the break. Don't go anywhere. You're listening to the Chronicles of a Gooner podcast with me, your host, Harry Symeou.
You're listening to the Chronicles of a Gooner. Like and subscribe.
That's right. You're listening to the Chronicles of a Gooner podcast. Like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. It really, really does help. If you're watching us back on playback, please do hype the video as well. Apparently, that really, really helps. If you'd like to go one further and support us on Patreon going into the new year, you'll get access to all our exclusive content. You'll get access to every single episode completely ad-free. Plus, you get membership to our Discord server, which is great fun with some fantastic people in it. And there were a fair few nerves in that chat box yesterday, which is absolutely understandable. You can sign up for less than the price of a cup of coffee per month. The link is in the description, patreon.com/the Chronicles of a Gooner. Your support would be very, very much appreciated. So do come over and check it out if you can, of course. Yeah, I mean, let's start breaking down some of those incidents. First of all, Unai Emery's failure to shake Mikel Arteta's hand. Now, the game finishes. I pack down my radio kit. I take a little video for the socials and for the YouTube channel. I upload it, and then I make my way downstairs into the radio interview room where we are waiting for the managers to come through so that we can conduct our interviews. And at this point, I haven't seen anything on social media. At this point, I've literally just finished watching the game. I've been super busy. I'm always conscious of getting down there quickly. I mean, the managers normally take an absolute age to come through, but the one time that I take my time will probably be the one time that I miss them, right? So I've got myself down into the radio room and I'm standing there and I'm waiting and I'm scrolling through X. And what do I see? I see the video of Mikel Arteta coming out of his sort of technical area, looking to his right for Unai Emery, not seeing him. Andrea Berta seemingly pointing as if to say he's gone down the tunnel, and Arteta just going about his business and getting on with it. And honestly, like, I don't think it's that big a deal. And I said this in my X post last night. Like, managers are emotional. Managers care. They're where they are because they care deeply for the game of football. They're very, very passionate. Sometimes emotions get the better of us, right? We've all been there. We're all human. We've all been there. So Unai Emery not shaking his hand, it's not a big deal. Unai Emery probably goes into Mikel Arteta's office after everybody's gone home or when everybody's sort of finished for the night, shakes his hand, says, "Sorry, mate, rush down the tunnel." Not in so many words, but you get what I mean. He probably goes, has a conversation with them. There is a mutual respect. They're from the same region in Spain. I think there's a mutual respect, and it is what it is. Like, Mikel Arteta made a point in his interview of saying there's no problem there. But what I found astonishing was that Unai Emery would come into the radio room, just as he did when he done his interview for Sky, and flat out lie about what happened. He said, "I was waiting, but Mikel Arteta had gone off to his coaching staff, and I wasn't going to wait because it was cold." He made the point that there's no issue and there's no problem. But my God, why lie? There's about 47,000 cameras inside that stadium. You just made yourself look like a bit of a crybaby. You made yourself look salty. You made yourself look like a sore loser. And listen, all the best managers in world football, they are sore losers. So I'm not going to judge Unai Emery on it going forward. But I just thought it was astonishing that he came into the room and he was just willing to lie flat out about what happened. In fairness to Emery, there were a few questions in the interview where it was almost as though the interviewers were trying to get him to, and I understand it's their job, they were trying to get him to commit to complaining about a certain decision, whether it was the alleged foul on Emi Martinez from Gabriel during Arsenal's first goal, whether it was Mikel Merino not being sent off. For the record, had the referee in that instance run over and shown Mikel Merino a second yellow card, I would have had no complaints. He's literally wrestled the guy down to the ground. But the problem that you have here, and why the referee, I think, went the way he did, Darren England, who I thought was dreadful, by the way, throughout the game. Why I think that he went the way he did was because he'd set a precedent earlier on in the game. He'd let lots go. Lots of yellow card offences, in my opinion, went completely unpunished. And as a result of it, he had no choice but to sort of maintain that level of consistency. But really and truly, by the letter of the law, Mikel Merino should have been sent off. Now, I can't remember, and I don't have it on, there's no timeline of it, right? Because Mikel Merino didn't get shown a yellow card. So I can't find the timeline on any website. Is my memory serving me correctly when I say, and please do let me know in the chat, that this was at 2-0, in which case it was hardly game defining. I think we also have to talk about Onana's dive in the first half, which was as embarrassing as anything I've ever seen. And there was no decision taken there. And the referee, the funny thing about that was that the referee was really close to it. He emphatically waves away the half-hearted penalty appeal. But when the player then drops it as quickly as Onana did, rather than sort of really protesting and making a thing of it, you know that it was a dive. And you don't need a replay to tell you that. When you see the replay, you see exactly what an embarrassing moment that was for Onana. Simulation is a thing, and we need to be really, really hard on it. And for whatever reason, there was no action taken there. What I did like in the first half was Yuri and Timber getting Morgan Rogers booked. Like, Arsenal get a free kick, if you remember this. Yuri and Timber puts the ball down, doesn't even give Morgan Rogers a split second to move, and just blasts the ball at him and puts his arms up as if to say he's delaying the restart. And the referee, Darren England, fell for that. It was such a clever bit of play from Yuri and Timber. But if you're Morgan Rogers, you'd be absolutely livid there. Absolutely livid. Look, we are going to work our way through some of the stats and through some of the individual performances. I will dive into the comments section as well. So do not fear. I don't care if we run a little bit longer today. Today is a good day, and it's the final podcast of 2025. So why not? I do want to touch on this, okay? Because I've talked about where my head was at when the Declan Rice news came out. Ben says, please, Harry, talk about Gunnerblog and the horrendous abuse he got after the Rice story. Gunnerblog is one of my favorite Arsenal people in terms of the content that he puts out. I don't know him amazingly well. I know him to say hello to. We have conversations when we see each other. I don't know him, amazingly well, but he seems like a great guy, and I love the work that he does. Okay, this thing that sort of developed online, and I did see a few comments to this effect, I thought was pathetic. The guy is a football reporter for The Athletic. His job is to report news. Why wouldn't he report that news? And if you think that Gunnerblog knew but Aston Villa didn't, a club like Aston Villa had no inkling, no idea, then you're living in cloud cuckoo land. It wasn't damaging to Arsenal. If anything, it gave a lot of us time to kind of process the news. I know that the first 15 minutes or so of the game in particular, we were all like, oh my God, we need Declan Rice. We're missing Declan Rice. But you can't have a go at someone for doing their job. Like, come on, man. Like, just some of the responses I saw to that were mind-blowing and honestly ridiculous. And when I saw that stuff, it reminded me of exactly why in recent months I've made a bit of a shift to Instagram more than X. I still am on X. I still use X, but I don't spend as much time on it as I used to, because I just feel like everything is so like angry all the time. The guy's done nothing wrong. He's reported the news. And also the other thing, right? And this just is where people demonstrate a complete lack of understanding as to how the football media landscape, I beg your pardon, or world works. I'm not saying, right, that I know where the news came from and how it found its way to James. I don't know that, right? He knows that. He knows who his source is, what his source is. But if you think that came out to a journalist without it going through the club first, I mean, I'm not saying it definitely did because I don't know, but I'm pretty confident when I say that someone at the club would have known that was coming out, and that's it. And so, if you want to have a moan about someone leaking the news and it being this major problem, which it wasn't, by the way, then you should probably look at the club and ask yourself how that got out, rather than going after a journalist who's just doing his job. Ridiculous, really ridiculous. Anyway, we're going to dive into the comment section in a minute. I just want to cover off some of the match stats from yesterday's game, which I thought were interesting. Let me share my screen with you guys that are watching. Just a quick reminder, if you haven't done so already, make sure that you like the video. Make sure that you subscribe to the channel if you're new as well. All of that stuff really, really does help. There are hundreds of you with us live right now, which is truly amazing when you consider it's New Year's Eve, and I'm sure people have got much better things to do. But we've only got 70 likes on the board. Can we get to 150? I mean, not even half of you would have to like the video for us to get there. So let's do it. Let's do it. Okay. In terms of the possession stats, not as high as they normally are for Arsenal, but that's okay because we were efficient. That's okay because we were, performing in the final third, particularly in that second half at a really, really high level. And we don't always need to have the ball to be effective. And this is something I think we've learned over the course of Mikel Arteta's tenure. So Arsenal had 46.3% of the ball, according to the BBC Sport website. XG, over 3 XG for Arsenal. So we even outperformed that. We managed 4 goals, 3.17 XG. Aston Villa had an XG of 2.67. Now, what's interesting to note, and I heard Elliot on the Arsenal Vision IR, which I haven't finished yet. I've only heard the first sort of 15 minutes or so. And I will finish it because it's brilliant. And I recommend that you become a patron over there and you listen to it. He said that 0.99 of that XG was Ollie Watkins' goal, which obviously is a tap-in from 2 yards out. And I'd imagine that opportunity that Ollie Watkins spurned in the first half was of a really high XG value as well. Arsenal had 22 shots at goal, 7 attempts on target, and it just felt like Arsenal were really kind of efficient in that second half, which is something that we've bemoaned in recent weeks. We haven't always seen it. We've struggled with it at times. We've not always managed to pull it off. We've not always managed to achieve the reward, if you like, of what our good play should be deserving of under normal circumstances. But yesterday, that all changed and it all clicked. And this is consistent with the way things have been going in the last couple of games. Palace, our XG was really high. I thought it was some of the best attacking football that we played all season. I know it was a cup game. I know there were changes. But I really made that point quite strongly after that game. I thought there was an intensity about the way that we were attacking. And there was a cohesive nature about our play. And then you look at the Brighton game, and again, in spells, I thought, especially in that first half, we showed all of that stuff again. The problem is right now is that when we're not making that many changes in terms of the team, and I suppose you could level that as a criticism at Mikel if you want, we are going to have drop-offs in games. And so it's really, really important that when we are on top, we make the absolute most of that and we make it count. And I think we did that yesterday against Villa. And it really kind of benefited us because after we I would say after 70 minutes, we completely gassed out. And there were certain players on the pitch that completely gassed out. And it's understandable. I tweeted at halftime, or X'd, whatever the hell you call it nowadays, that there were a number of players that weren't quite at full power. And I didn't want to dig them out in the middle of the game. But the players that I was looking at, Big Gabby, not at full power in that first half, as far as I was concerned. I didn't feel as comfortable with him and Saliba being sort of left as the sole pair back to defend certain situations, as I normally do, because I didn't feel Gabriel was at his brilliant best. Obviously, he goes on to have a massive impact at the other end of the pitch, makes some really vital defensive contributions in the second half, and then goes off. I think he's going to be fine. I think he just ran out of gas. I don't think he ever had more than sort of 65 to 70 minutes in the tank anyway. Zuri and Timber, who we've rushed back. Mikel Arteta told me after the game that he pushed those guys to the maximum, that we had to push them to get them back fit and available. No sign of Ricardo Calafiori, so no let up there in terms of different options because he's still got that injury. Timber was never going to last the entire game. And there were others as well that for me just weren't quite at full power. And that doesn't mean that they're bad players and that they can't help us and they can't help us get to where we need to get. But we weren't at our brilliant best, yet we've managed to come together and connect in a period of time that has been enough for us to essentially take the game away from a really, really decent side. if we run through the individual performances, and then we're going to dive into the comments. So get your questions in, get your comments in. I'll be with you in about 5 minutes. Put a cue at the beginning of your questions, and that just helps me to pick them out. Raya made an outstanding double save. Really unlucky not to get the clean sheet again with his distribution. Fantastic. Timber, not quite at his brilliant best, but had a solid enough game. Saliba was really good, I thought. Gabriel Magalhaes didn't quite look at 100%, but was, impactful enough, and his presence just makes the world of difference. I thought Piero Hincapié was one of our better players last night. I really enjoyed seeing him play at left back yesterday. I think he's a more natural fit at left back, but obviously issues in recent weeks and months have meant that he's had to play at centre half a lot more. Zubimendi, I thought, was a bit lost in the first 20 minutes of the game, but after that, he really came to life. And I thought that from about 20 minutes onwards, this was probably Martin Zubimendi's best performance in an Arsenal shirt. Not just because he scored, but because he was pressing, he was hassling, he was winning the ball back, he was moving the ball through the lines incredibly quickly. And I just thought we saw all the best bits of Martin Zubimendi yesterday. Mikel Merino, I thought, was a big part of the reason why we struggled in that first 15 or so minutes of the game. And I don't know if I blame him, because he was just playing his natural game, but his natural game wasn't working for us. We were without Declan Rice, whose athleticism allows him to be box to box, allows him to get back and support defensively, but also allows him to get into the final third and make a nuisance of himself at that end of the pitch. Mikel Merino doesn't have that. He doesn't have that mobility, he doesn't have that speed, he doesn't have that athleticism. He's a clever, wily player, but I was sort of looking at him in the first 15 minutes thinking, when is the penny going to drop for you? When is it that you're going to realize that you can't be this high up in this Arsenal midfield? You need to drop deeper. You need to get closer to Zubimendi. Odegaard is dropping deeper to try and compensate for Rice's absence. But what that's doing is taking away from us on that right-hand side and in that final third. And so the only way that you get the best out of Mikel Merino is if you squeeze up and the gaps and the distances are smaller. That's how you get the best out of Mikel Merino. To have him that high up in a stretched and quite open game as it was at that stage was problematic for me. Odegaard was majestic again. In that second half especially, he was unreal. In the first half, there were periods where I thought he went missing a little bit, but I've already highlighted tactically why I think we had issues and problems. But Odegaard, when he sort of burst into life in that second half, unreal, and probably unlucky not to score himself as well. Saka, again, one of those players that I would argue not quite at his maximum power. But Bukayo Saka being on the pitch, full stop, is a threat. It pins people back. It gives you something. Trossard on the left was outstanding. In the first half, I thought he was Arsenal's best player, and he continued to perform at a really high level in that second period. And his goal was truly brilliant. Victor Gyökeres. Now, I've been really critical of Victor Gyökeres in recent games, like in recent weeks, a lot. And I wouldn't be fair if I don't acknowledge and admit that Victor Gyökeres was better yesterday. Now, I wouldn't have started him in the game. I'd have picked Gabriel Jesus. In the end, the way that Mikel managed it, it worked out perfectly. Gyökeres to run him ragged, to cause him issues, to bully, to be physical, to stretch people, and Gabriel Jesus to come on and expose the spaces when there are tired legs and when the game state is different. In the end, it was managed to perfection. But I will say this. Victor Gyökeres, for me, was better yesterday than he has been in any of those recent games. And I'll explain a little bit about why. His touch was better. His hold-up play was more effective. He was making better moves, better runs, in my opinion. And there was one situation. Well, he had that header really early on in the game where he put it on the roof of the net. Difficult chance. Not going to blame him for not scoring that. And then he had another header in the first half where he put it just wide of the near post. Now, I heard a lot of people in the press room and on my way home saying things like, man, he should have scored there. He should have done more with that. He should have done better with that. And I suppose if you're talking about a top-level striker, which is what we believed we were getting when we signed Victor Gyökeres, that's a fair comment and opinion to have. However, what I really loved about that is not the fact that he missed it. He missed it. Obviously, I prefer that he scores. But what I loved about that scenario was that Victor Gyökeres was proactive. Watch it back again. What he doesn't do is what I've accused him of doing many, many times in the past, which is hiding between a couple of defenders and waiting for the ball to come to him. The ball's out on the left-hand side. Was it Nketiah that played the cross? Or was it Trossard? I'm not sure. I think it might have been Trossard on that one. I think Nketiah was the first one. I think it was Trossard. But the minute he feels like there's an opportunity for the ball to be delivered in, he makes a move and he gets in front of not just one, but two defenders. He gets in front of two defenders and he makes the contact with the ball nice and early. Now, it's still not perfect and it's still not ideal, and there's still obviously room for improvement. But that was Victor Gyökeres being proactive, and I like that. That's what I want to see from him. And I'm fair, okay? You might not always agree with me, but I like to think I'm fair. I don't have an agenda against him. I don't have a vendetta against the guy. I want him to succeed. He's an Arsenal player. I just think he needs to do that more. I think he needs to do that more. And if he does, the goals will come. Yesterday, he showed that. He was better yesterday. I wasn't looking at him and going, you're a problem for us today. Don't get me wrong. There were moments in the first half where he frustrated me. But ultimately, I think there were signs of improvement. Is it enough improvement? Is he in a place where, I can sit here hand on heart and say he's doing a really good job? No, he's not. But overall, I thought it was a better display from him than what we've seen in recent weeks. So, yeah. Okay, let's go into the chat box, shall we? Lots of you with the Happy New Year messages and all the rest of it. I will wish you all a Happy New Year at the end of the pod, of course I will. But I've got a little sort of just a 5-minute thank you post coming out a little bit later on in the day, just to give you guys a bit of an update on where the Chronicles of Aguna is at, to thank you guys for your support over the course of the year. So make sure you check that out and give it a like, because I don't imagine it's going to do too well algorithm wise on YouTube. So do give it a like if you can. Okay, let's dive into the chat box. What have we got? Callum says, does this result boost your confidence in our chances of winning the whole thing? Furthermore, if City drop points tomorrow, let's hope brother Shaka can help us out. It'd be great if Manchester City were to drop points, but I feel like we've got to get over this thing where we're like nervously watching every single one of their games, hoping that they're going to slip up. Just keep doing our thing. That's what we've done over the last couple of weeks, last couple of games. Just keep doing our thing. And the fact is that even if they win, obviously, I prefer that they don't. I'm not going to be beating myself up about it because we've done our job. And as long as you do your job, that's where you want to be. You know, we're the front runners. We're the leaders at the moment. That could change, and it might change back again a number of times, actually, between now and the end of the season. But we're in a good place, and I think we need to focus on us. But does this result boost my confidence in our chances of winning things? Yes, because when we needed a statement result and performance, we were able to produce it, even under difficult circumstances. And I know we're going to be playing a lot of games between now and the end of the season, but this is always one of the most taxing periods of the campaign. And, you know, we've got a really busy January. I think we play across 4 competitions in January, which is a lot. But I think that, you know, there will be opportunities. Portsmouth in the Cup is an opportunity to rotate a little bit. Will we play the best of the best against Chelsea in the League Cup semi-final? I'm not suggesting we don't take it seriously, but I think there's room for rotation there as well over the course of the 2 legs and the 2 games. And there'll probably be a couple of league games in there where you feel like you can make 2 or 3 changes and get away with it. We've got to use the squad. We've got to keep everybody as fit as we possibly can, because I'm just starting to wonder. You know, we went into the season, massive squad, really excited. Now we can rotate. In theory, now we shouldn't fall away. But in the last few weeks where I've seen players playing at half power, players not looking fit, players being pushed back from injuries because we're not quite sure that we've got what's necessary, or we don't have, in the case of some players, what's necessary to replace them and maintain a certain standard. I do feel like we've maybe pushed a little bit too hard, and we need to wind that back a bit, scale it back a bit, and make sure that we rotate a bit more. Rumble on with a random question, but it's a good question because it's a question I get asked a lot, and that's why I'm going to answer it. I know it's not Arsenal related. Has 90 Min closed down? Yeah, 90 Min is no longer running the English edition. I don't know about in the other countries. but 90 minute isn't running anymore. That's why you don't see us on a Monday morning anymore, chewing the fat from every Premier League weekend. I miss it. The guys were great. I was a part of it for a good number of years. It gave me a lot. Really, really enjoyed it. I learned a lot. But it's no longer there. No, sadly, it is sadly, because it was really, really great fun. Joe says also it seems the instructions were to attack Villa's right-hand side, which is why Saka got no joy. Trossard was brilliant as there was no cash. Yeah, I'm pretty sure on my X account, let me just double check this because I said something to this effect. I'm just trying to find it. Hold on. So I can show it to you guys just to prove that I'm not being a hindsight merchant. Hold on a sec. What am I doing here? I want to remove this, stop screen share, and open a new screen share. Screen share window. There we go. That's the one. Yeah. So these were my halftime thoughts, right? So at halftime of the game, this is what I posted. 2 or 3 Arsenal players don't quite look at full power. Struggled with Villa's midfield running power early on, but have improved in that department since. Targeting Villa's right side, ? We seem a lot more left-leaning than normal. And then I talked about Villa succeeding in disrupting our rhythm and the fact that they were happy to run down the clock. They were running down the clock after 6 minutes, by the way. 6 minutes. And I don't know how I should take that. Like, do I take it and get angry about it and think what a bunch of S-houses you guys are that you're doing that 6 minutes into a game? Or do I take it as a compliment to our team? They knew that if we got ahead of steam, if we built momentum, if we generated the kind of mood inside Emirates Stadium that we can, that they would struggle. And so it's clever from them. It's smart from them. I always blame the officials in that situation because you've got to keep a lid on it. And Emi Martinez was taking the complete and utter beep, from the off, and the referee had no intention whatsoever of making a thing of it or dealing with it. Pavel Andreev says, Harry, do you watch Match of the Day, and who's your favorite pundit? Look, I'll be honest, I do watch Match of the Day, but sometimes I just watch the highlights packages that they put on the BBC Sport website now rather than the whole program, and I don't always see the punditry. I quite like Alan Shearer lately. He's not someone that I liked as a player, just not because of any reason other than he played for Newcastle United and he was a bloody good player. But I quite like him as a pundit now. I do. I think he's quite insightful, particularly when you're talking about strikers and that, as I've mentioned to you guys before, always interests me a lot more. Joe Hart's done some good bits recently on goalkeeping as well. So there's a fair few good things out there. And Match of the Day for me, it's something that is a part of my upbringing and my youth and my childhood and football support in life. And I can't turn my back on it. I know a lot of people have. And there's a lot of people, like I speak to kids younger than me now, right? Like family, friends and relatives and stuff. And they barely watch a game of football in full anymore. Like they just literally go on YouTube and watch the 2 minutes highlights. And they think they know everything about the game. It's just all changed. Everything's so quick fire nowadays. People watch goals on Instagram rather than watching goals on the television. It's just changed completely, hasn't it? But I still watch it, yeah. Benno says, more love for Odegaard, please. Oh, mate, absolutely. He's come back to form just at the right time when we need him. Just when we need him. Just when we needed him most. Andy says, did you notice the different levels of pressing last night? And do you think we will or should just drop and start the press at the halfway line to save energy, not get sucked in? I think it depends on what the opposition do. Like when an opposition come and play us with a low block, then you have to press high. And you can't just press at the halfway line because then you're not putting them under any duress, under any pressure whatsoever. So I think the approach that you take pressing-wise is dependent on what you're up against. And I think we got caught out a little bit by the fact that Villa were mid-blocking us. And when a team mid-blocks you, you've got to find a different balance because you want to press really aggressively. But if you're playing a team like Villa who have the capacity to work their way through your press and then get onto your back line, you got a problem. When you're playing a team that are less talented and less capable and they set up with a mid-block, you probably sit there and rub your hands together and think there's spacing behind them now, we can hurt them. But Villa have always caused us a problem like that. Unai Emery's always caused us a problem like that. I wasn't surprised that we struggled with it. because there were variations to it. But I will say this, like, eventually we worked it out. And thankfully, and we were a little bit lucky in that sense, we didn't pay the price for struggling with it from the very beginning. Peter says, that's it now, Harry. Being very superstitious, being top on New Year's Eve means we stay top till December 31st, 2026. That'd be nice, wouldn't it? I don't even need us to be top for that long. I just need us to be top until May. Tracksmith. Oh yeah, I don't even know if I've touched on Emi Martinez apart from his shambolic time wasting. Tracksmith says, did you see Emi purposely blocking people by stretching in the tunnel before the game? I commented on a video of that saying, of all the places to stretch, why would you pick there? And I have seen that video of Emi going down the tunnel and getting dogs abuse from some Arsenal fans. I hope that doesn't lead to them covering the tunnel again. And that stuff is never right. But as an Arsenal fan, I'd be lying if I said I didn't enjoy watching him get rattled a little bit. And that's fine. You know, that's fine. That's football. That's rivalry. That's what it's all about. But yeah. Anyway, Wes Bird says, Harry, I felt it took the first half to work out Villa and Marino wasn't working. Your thoughts on why Arteta maybe didn't go with Norgard? We upped the tempo second half, and that was key. Annoying we conceded, though. I wouldn't have started Norgard. I think given what was available to us, that was exactly the lineup that I would have picked, barring the centre forward, because I would have picked Jesus. So I'd be a liar if I said I would have picked Gyökeres now. But I tell you what, I thought Norgard should have come on. Let me just double check exactly when he came on. He came on 73. I would have brought him on probably 60. So we were 2-0 up by that point. I would have probably brought him on then. The minute that Mikel Merino got away with that potential second yellow card, I looked at the bench and Christian Norgard was receiving instructions. So I've talked about this before. I think Mikel Arteta is a manager who is very much shaped by previous experiences, and painful experiences lead to him changing his mindset, outlook, approach on certain things. And nothing is more obvious than the way that he is so afraid nowadays of going down to 10 men. The minute a player gets a yellow card, the other day, he was going to bring in Capier off and replace him with Big Gabby. I saw it because the fourth official held up the board and it had the number 5 on it. Then Mars Lewis Skelly picked up a yellow card and they quickly changed it and they got Lewis Skelly off. Marino needed to come off prior to when he actually did, in my opinion. And to be fair to the guy, he was dead on his feet as well. How much football, how many minutes is he going to play? It's completely understandable why he is where he is. But my point is this. Mikel Arteta is so petrified of going down to 10 men because of previous experiences that the minute that situation developed and we luckily got away with it in that instance, he was going to make a change. And it was the right change. I think it came a few minutes too late. But I also, like, people always say that, right? And there's a lot of criticism. And I know Jeffrey's not per se criticizing Mikel, but he's just saying, he's highlighting this, an observation that Arteta always makes late subs. I'd imagine that when a game is really difficult, really intense, there's a fear of making changes, because we see managers proactively make changes that go on to look like strokes of genius. But there's times where you bring a player on who's not quite up to speed quickly enough, and all of a sudden, a substitution can be costly and detrimental. So I kind of get that there's a conundrum that he has to deal with every time he's considering making a change. But the red card thing, the potential red card thing, is something that weighs heavily on his mind, clearly. And he has now developed into a manager that really does fear going down to 10 men. I don't know if that's a good or bad thing. Joe says, Arteta has said, I need my 9 to be comfortable not scoring goals. I've just accepted the goals will come all over the pitch. High scoring games, always different goal scorers. Thoughts? I'm trying to think about the quote that you're referencing. Did he say that I need my 9 to be comfortable not scoring goals? I can't remember that myself. But if he did say that, I'll try and put some meat on the bone. I'm going to say that he probably means that his 9 has to contribute in a number of ways, and that goals are obviously important for a 9, but they're not the only thing that he's looking for. And so if the 9 doesn't score, it doesn't mean he's had a bad game. That's how I interpret that. But yeah, look, an unbelievable way to finish the year, an unbelievable way to finish the pod, I think. Just sort of waxing lyrical about this Arsenal side and where they're at and how they smelt blood against Aston Villa and made sure they went for the kill, something that we've been accused of not doing often enough at points this season. As I mentioned, I'm going to put a little message out to say thank you for all your love and support over the course of this year. I really, really do appreciate it. For those of you that won't get a chance to listen to this, Happy New Year. And thank you all so, so, so much for all the support that you've given me over this last year. The Chronicles of a Gooner podcast isn't the only thing I do nowadays, but it is how it started for me in football. And without this podcast, I wouldn't be able to call football my job. And I know there's a lot of people that don't like me, and there's a lot of people that don't like what I say, don't like my opinions, don't like my views. I get called all sorts, right? But whatever, because I get to do what I love. And that is because the vast majority of you are amazing people and are super, super supportive. So thank you from the bottom of my heart. And I will speak to you all in the new year. I would say I'll speak to you on the New Year message thing, but I've already recorded it. So that's a bit cheeky of me. Anyway, I'll speak to you all in the new year. The Patreon piece off the back of this game, I'm not going to lie to you. I'm having a New Year's party tonight. I'm not going to sit and record a Patreon piece today. I've got 1,000,001 things to do, but I will get one out to you over the course of the next couple of days. I know I owe you one. So yeah, you can check that out when it's available. I'll probably get it done tomorrow because while everybody else is nursing hangovers, I'm working on an EFL game. But maybe I'll record it in the car, and yeah, maybe I'll upload it when I get to the studios. I don't know, but we'll get it out very, very soon. Thank you all. I'll catch you all very, very soon. Have a wonderful day. Up the Arsenal. Arsenal 4, Aston Villa 1, ending the year in style. What more could we ask for? Have a good one.
Chronicles of a Gooner. Like and subscribe. Chronicles of a Gooner. Harry Symeou time. Arsenal. Come on, you Gunners. Arsenal. Chronicles of a Gooner.